There's a lot to learn from our history. And I think, unfortunately, a number of us forget about our history. In our world today, if it wasn't for the innovations that people came up with 30, 40 years ago, we wouldn't have what we have today. It is amazing to me, without the technology that was in place, what previous generations were able to build and create and have it be long-standing. My grandfather, Norman, at a very young age, left the family homestead of Nova Scotia and made his way west by himself back in the early 1900s to create a new life for himself. And where he ended up was in Alaska, working in logging camps, and then came back down to Washington, working in and running the logging camps in the Olympic Peninsula, up in Cedar-Woolley, Seattle, believe it or not, at the time was heavily forested. From the stories that I've heard, he was very fair and very strict. He was a type of guy that let your yes be yes and your no be no. So my father, who grew up in the logging camps, working at a young age of 12 years old, was driving steam locomotives down the hills and driving logging trucks. The stories and the knowledge that I learned from him has always stuck with me. One of the best stories that I remember my dad telling me was when my father was like 14, 15 years old and was doing all the estimating of board feet of logs coming off the mountain or out of the hills. My grandfather was running the camp, and this salty old logger was challenging the math. And my grandfather came out and told the guy, okay, we'll make you a deal. You either get paid what I estimate it at, or you get paid at what my son estimates it at. You choose. My grandfather always taught my dad, over allow. Don't ever cut them short, always give them extra. So it ended up costing this guy, I don't know how much money, but back then it was a significant amount to him. And from that point on, they never questioned him. So those are the types of things that were instilled in my dad at a young age, that my dad has instilled into me. And I think I've passed that along to my kids, and I think that will continue on down the line. Learning from his father, Norman, about the importances of forest management led him down the path of horticulture and botany and biology. I remember one of my chores was to weed the garden. I was pulling out clumps of weeds and just throwing them in the yard waste bin with big, huge clumps of dirt on it. And he's like, don't do that. Save the dirt. I said, well, why? It's just dirt. He says, because it's the only dirt we have. And that's always stuck with me. These are the only forests that we have. This is the only dirt that we have. This is the only water that we have. We need to take care of it. I remember at a young age, maybe junior high, driving through one of the forests, and him talking about his thoughts and the benefits of selective harvesting over other types of harvesting, and the benefits that would provide for the health and the well-being of the forest. He would explain to me that forest fires are actually beneficial for the forest. They happen for a reason, but it's more beneficial for the forest if the fires are going through managed forests. Forests play a hugely vital part in our world. We need them, and we need to practice proper management. And even though I'm not in the forest industry, I can partner with people that share the same mindset, and that's what we've done. You know, I've spent well over a decade in this industry. It wasn't an overt thought. It just kind of was a draw. When a position became available, I took it, and the passion kind of grew in me out of that, and it brought back the memories and the connections of my childhood. That kind of led us to where we are today. In utilizing mass timber, you take smaller timbers to create bigger. It's more sustainably harvested than going through and cutting down a tree that's 200 feet tall to get 4 big timbers out of it. One of the goals here at Innovative Structures, the mission, if you will, is to honor the legacy of my father, Jack, my grandfather, Norman, and the knowledge that they've imparted into me and our entire family, and not to just provide a beautiful all-wood structure, but to provide one not at the cost or the expense of the forest, but actually to its benefit.